Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slay to Success Talk Show. It is your girl, your host, Rochelle Slay Queen Hemingway. And tonight, y'all, we are going to have yet another conversation with a persons that I'm inspired by on a regular basis, on someone who is living their life on their own terms and slaying it. And that way we can positively impact and make a difference in this world. So if you are new to the show and you're showing up, I see Raul. Hey, how you doing? Nice that you can be here live with us. Please, if you are here, let us know. Okay, drop it into the comments. Tell us your name and where you're streaming in from so you can get a shout out from me. Because tonight, y'all, go get your tea, go get whatever you need. Maybe you got a beverage of choice, because what I'm doing here is having this conversation. Now, I am the CEO and founder of Slay to Success, which is a leadership and transformational consultant service business. I am specifically empowering women who are transitioning from military life to civilian life after serving 20 years or more. And we're making a customized creational transformational plan so they can step up and step into their next big dream, goal, or aspiration with 10x confidence. And I offer programs, workshops, power hours, women empowerment events, and I am a speaker and author of a book titled Slay to Success, a mentor and a United States Air Force veteran of 30 years. So I see you, Soraya. Welcome on in. Hey, Queen. Thank you for being here. Raul said, God is good. I live in Georgia. That's right. Tara, thank you for showing up. I know you're on LinkedIn. Hey, and she's from Arizona. And I've got Dr. Brandon Dinkins here. Glad to be here. And he is stationed here in the DMVs, but specifically Maryland. So y'all know what the word slay means, right? Y'all can probably rattle it off right now. You know, it means to kill it, to dominate it, and to nail it, to be on point, to impress greatly, and to dream and work hard until you own it. It is also an acronym, y'all. So the S stands for stay ready, be ready. L, lead out loud. A sense of community, a sense of family. And Y, you are built to last. So before we bring our featured speaker on tonight, we got to do a little bit of housekeeping. You know what I do is I'm going to put up here, we do have our Rediscover Your Confidence workshop coming on. So if you are a woman who is transitioning out of military service and you are looking, all right, for an opportunity to get with other women, come on to the Power Hour. It's in a group setting, and it is going to be 60 minutes on Zoom platform starting on the 2nd of October. And so we're going to meet every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There is the link. Go ahead and scan it right there and then look at it. And then please, y'all, I'm going to tell you over and over and over again, listen, share, and subscribe. Okay? Listen, share, and subscribe. So I know y'all are here. Let me get to these comments, y'all. Gloria's in the house. Hey, Glo. You know, Gloria was on the show not last week, but the week before. So she is here. So thank you for your support again, my sister. And Soraya says, thank you for your service. You're absolutely welcome. And April is here, and she is stationed out in Arizona. And you know, I was stationed at Luke for 3 years. So I know it's probably still hot out there. So without further ado, let's get super excited for this slay amazing conversation. My retired Air Force brother, Joshua Roberts, is in the building. Okay. Now, Joshua, he is the founder of Fusewell Strategies, which is a leadership development and strategic personal coaching company. He also founded and leads Reaper Fit, where he conducts personal training, all right, for clients of all ages, sexes, and fitness levels. Josh spent 20 years in the United States Air Force as a munitions systems technician, and he served over 4 years as a military training instructor in Air Force basic training before retiring as a senior master sergeant. Now, me and Josh, okay, met at Ellsworth Air Force Base at my last base. So I will bring him on the show. Hey, Josh.
Hello, hello. Good to
What's
be
going
here.
on? How you feeling out there?
I'm feeling amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit nervous. I've never done anything like this before, so it's a
Listen,
new
hey,
experience for me.
don't get nervous now, all right? Because this is the show to be on. I know folks will be itching to get on this show at any point. So please tell us, Josh, who you are, a little bit about who you are and what you doing.
Okay. Well, as you said, I spent 20 years in the Air Force. Joined a little bit later. I'd gone to college for a couple years, and then 9/11 happened, and so I joined. I waited about 9 months before I joined. I was already married at that point, and was kind of afraid of what that would do for my wife. But it just the longer I spent time working for somebody else and realizing all my hard work was going right in their pocket,
Mm,
I also had grown up in the country of Mexico, so I grew up in a foreign country, and the United States for me was always it was just something that I'd come back across the border in El Paso, and it felt different. It felt like
mm-hmm.
home. And so serving the military was something I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did. I joined when I was 21, turned 22 in basic. Um, Stationed all over Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Aviano. I did a little over 4 as an MTI, and then at Ellsworth, made senior, did my time there, but just kind of figured out that my family needed some stability, and so that was a huge driving factor in me pushing the button to retire. So I retired back last November. Did skill bridge with State Farm for a little bit. Realized really quickly that wasn't the path I wanted to be on, and so
Okay, let's talk. Okay, so you said you stopped, you were like, oh, okay, let me do State Farm. Because I remember you reached out to me. It's like,
yeah.
hey, I got a job at State Farm, and you were like excited. And it's like, what was missing out of there that you were like, yeah, this is probably not for me. Are you good?
um, I think part of it was I didn't feel proud. Like when I
Mm,
told people I was an insurance agent, that wasn't something that people expected out of me.
yeah.
And having done 20 years where, legitimately, I was excited and proud to wear my uniform. I was not proud to necessarily tell people that I sold insurance. And it wasn't because it's not a necessary industry and because there's anything wrong with it. It just, for me, I felt a drive, and I've always felt this drive to kind of help people, build people. Teaching is kind of my forte, and so that was a big part of it. And then for me, the drive was always about money, and that's
Mm,
not who I am. I grew up a missionary kid in a foreign country. I've never had money. I don't really know anything about what it'd be like to have it, and so that was the whole focus. And for me, I feel driven by other internal motivators, and so it just wasn't a good fit. And I'm
yeah.
very grateful for the opportunity that they gave me. It didn't feel right, and honestly, it was causing me all kinds of anxiety and stress, and just yeah, it just didn't feel right. So
Yeah. So then after a little bit, how much longer after that did you go in and found Fusewell Strategies?
so it took a couple weeks to really start writing down what it was that I did feel like I needed. That I wanted. If you remember, I called you and we
Hmm.
had a conversation. I quit State Farm and literally the next day drove almost 18 hours to just go hang out with a buddy. We played golf for a few days, and I just tried to like disconnect from everything. And then on the way back, I called you and kind of, you and I talked a little bit about who I am and what you saw in me, and I kind of was able to talk through where I was at. And so Fusewell really started with life coaching, mostly
Hmm.
because it was an industry that I didn't know a lot about. It's kind of easy to get into, but I figured out really quickly that the thing I enjoyed the most was teaching leadership. Um,
Yeah.
so that's it. Kind of morphed into that. I started the LLC as a way to give myself an in, and I knew it was going to evolve and transform over time, and that's what it's doing, and it's continuing to do that. So
Yeah. So, I think most of us as entrepreneurs that have stepped out, from the military and started our own business, we created an LLC. Like
Yeah.
Todd Simmons on the show last week, and he said he just created an LLC. We didn't know what that was meant, and we didn't
Yeah.
know what we were doing, but we actually took a step in there. And so you're saying that it's a leadership, driven company. What are some of the things about leadership that are like really like important to you? Like what do you speak to when you go out and you're doing your teaching?
So this is kind of an odd answer.
Okay.
But the things I learned the most about leadership were through my own failures. Um,
Yeah. So
so
let's talk about that.
yeah, so a year out now, I've had a lot of time to sit and think, and I had a wide variance of experiences as a leader. I led small organizations, and then for a time I filled in as a superintendent for a squadron of 300 plus.
Hmm.
I was an instructor supervisor as a military training instructor, so I was over MTIs. And during the past year, just doing a lot of self reflection, I realized there were a lot of things that I did really well, and
Hmm.
there were several things I did poorly that, though were completely sincere, could have gone a different way had I been more mature as a leader and less focused on my own ego. And so
Mm.
for me, it's been a long year of trying to figure out, like, when I teach leadership to, say, companies, the bottom line is what matters the most to them. Whereas in the Air Force, you can appeal to honor, courage, loyalty, duty, all of these things. Um, and trying to really get to the actual, what is, in any circumstance, what are the things that make leadership relevant? And so the first thing that I came
Mhm.
up with is 100%, like, you have to know your people. And that's not done behind a desk. It's just not. And so it's something I teach my course. It's called Next Level Leaders. I teach it on military bases, but I've also had the opportunity to teach it at hospitals and in companies. And the message is the same. It's,
Right.
as a leader, if you don't know, we'll liken it to being a shepherd, right? If you don't know
Yeah.
your flock, if you don't know the condition of your flock, how can you possibly think that those sheep are going to follow you? And why should they?
Yeah.
Right. Why should they? So for me, it's about establishing that baseline of, as a leader, you come in and you don't make changes immediately. You observe and you get to know the people that you're about to lead, and you find out their motivators. It's not about you as the leader. It's about the people that you're leading. And you ask questions that are not easy yes no answers. You ask questions
Right.
that are open ended, that force the people that you're leading to expose themselves to you in a way that you actually get to know them on a level that's not just do as I say because I say it, but you actually
Hmm.
figure out how to motivate them in a way that matters to them. So
Right.
that's, for me, that's the top number one, is just get to know your people.
Yeah. So, I really love the fact that you took a year, because some of us aren't taking the time that we need to do some introspection, right? Like doing some inner work. So, some of y'all may have heard me talk about inner work, but really looking back at what went right, what went wrong, and kind of like changing the way that we behave, because it's not about us personally, it's our behaviors. And then you're now looking like it's the people, right? It's the people that really matter when you're in a leadership position. And so how do you lead your people effectively? And it don't matter if you are leading folks in the military or if you are leading folks outside the military, these concepts are still tried and true. All right. So, what else in leadership is really like important for you? You said you are teaching next level leadership. So, what other principles do you talk
So,
to?
so especially when I teach at, we'll say, private enterprise, it's a little bit different because in a company, people can leave.
Yeah.
Like, they can quit. Whereas
Oh,
in the
yeah.
military, you can't. Like, so you can be the worst leader. And I'll throw this at you too, something that I've really started focusing on. When you're a bad leader, it's rarely you that pays the price for it.
Mm.
People that you lead that pay the price for your bad leadership. And again, I'm a case in point. I made some choices as an E8, um, in the way that I handled situations and people that in no way, shape, or form affected me, but
Yeah.
completely affected other people. And
Right.
it changed the direction of their career. Now, sometimes I think I made the right choice, but other times I did not. When I look at private companies, the number one thing that I think is missing, and the more, especially even like hospitals and places like investment companies, is giving feedback. Like, to me,
Mm.
like, I know that sounds so cliche, and it's for us in the military, it's something that we're required to do,
Yeah.
but it doesn't happen a lot on the other side. Like, you're talking like they may write something down and email it. You will get the email, sign it, and send it back. And so, like, teaching people how to give feedback that matters, both, especially, in my opinion, the most critical is that initial feedback where you're telling people, like, these are the expectations, and this is how you'll know if you're doing your job well, and this
Yeah.
is how you know that you're not, like, if you're not doing these things. But like, I taught at a hospital in Michigan. I'm talking over 400 nurses, right? It
Hmm.
just in one area. Their supervisor had 180 direct reports, direct 180 people that she was responsible to give feedback to, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
how she's like, I can't do my job and I can't do this. And, that would be my job. And I was like, well, maybe that is your job, right? Like, to give,
Yeah.
like, that's your job, is to lead them so that they can do their job. But she wanted to be out on the floor doing nurse things.
Ah.
And the problem was her job was to lead the nurses that are doing the nurse thing. So, being able to give feedback in a way that's constructive, we'll even say blunt if necessary, but at the
Hmm.
same time helpful, right? Like,
Yes.
it does no good to tell someone you suck at your job without being able to clarify for them, and this is why, and this is
Yeah.
how you can stop sucking. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. So that supportive role, because I know that sometimes, because I know from being in this space right now, the retention rates, they just
mm,
dive. You think retention rates are dying in the military? On the outside here, when there's choices now, the pandemic has really shown that you can pick a job, any job at any point that you want. You can do teleworking. How are you going to keep these folks in? And then that feedback is so important, but people just don't seem to think that is. But it's hard sometimes to think about, how do I talk to somebody? But when we're addressing behaviors
mm.
and not the person, then it becomes a little bit easier to do that.
Well, when you find, when you have places like Wendy's offering 16 an hour,
Yeah.
right? And then,
Sign me up.
yeah, and then you have businesses where, they're trying to retain their employees, and they're trying to, the best way to do that, um, based on the feedback I've gotten, is people will stay for less money if they feel like they matter, and
Yeah.
if they feel like they're seen and they're heard, which
Yeah.
is also something we do very poorly in the military, because in reality we're looking at it like you're just a part of the machine, you're replaceable, which is true. Like, the position number is
Yeah.
replaceable,
Yeah.
but the person filling it is not, right? And you and I have talked about this many times, where like that individual airman may bring a certain aspect to your squadron or to your unit that no other person can do. So
Yeah.
the position number is replaceable, but the person isn't. And businesses and companies have to look at it the same way. Like, if you have someone that's a fantastic manager, and I'm talking like, people like you and I, we're leaders in the sense of, you can cast a vision, you have great ideas, but you need those people that can move the herd from this side of the river to that side. That's
Yeah.
those managers, and those should be your highest paid people, because if you have that person that can take a leader's vision, translate it into an understandable, direction for the people that are actually having to do it, but then simultaneously lead them,
Yeah.
that person's incredibly valuable, like
Yeah.
incredibly valuable. It's not the CEO. The CEO gives great direction, they have vision, but man, when you have those mid-level managers, i.e., or in the military, the E5s, E6s, that are able to translate a vision and get people to work intrinsically, with that intrinsic value, that's that's awesome. So I've taken a lot of time in when I teach to try and explain the difference between leading and managing. But
Mm-hmm.
management has become a negative word, and I would challenge you to find any Fortune 500 company that doesn't advertise and fill manager roles because they're so important. It's just
Yeah.
they have to be leaders themselves while simultaneously also focusing on processes. And I feel like the E5s, E6s are in that same, even E7s, they're in that range where they're having to do all of that. And
Yeah.
so I love teaching that, like how to fill the role of leading, but at the same time, process management.
Yeah.
Because I was
So,
terrible at
yeah, well, look, I think that we could speak to leadership all day. And I know it's one of my pillars because I feel very passionate about leadership. And, you're now taking it to the corporate side because we were in the military, just, I mean, basically, we were teaching every day, all day, right? But
Yeah.
in corporate space, it's much different. And in translating and your skills. And so that I want to make a point to the audience that we all have transferable skills. If you are in a highly conforming environment like the military and you're trying to do something or start something, we have skills that we can use and apply in our business. All right. And so leadership for you, that next level leadership and offering it, not only to military audiences, but civilian audiences
Mhm.
is so needed. It's like impactful. And so you not only started that company, but you also started your Team Reaper Fit. So tell the audience a little bit about that.
All right. So my nickname when I was a MTI was the Soul Reaper, right? Like
Did y'all hear that? He was a Soul Reaper as an
I was,
MTI.
I was not a nice man, but I uh, I was actually working out one day, and this lady walked up and she's like, "Hey, are you a trainer?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "I would pay you to train me." And I was like,
Mm,
"Interesting. Okay." So started looking into it. Like ISSA offer a military program. You get a huge discount for being military to become a certified personal trainer. And so I
oh,
signed up. I did that course, um, got my certificate, and my goal was to work with people that are either beginners, they're insecure about what they're doing, or they have no direction, right? Like I'm not interested in working with gym rats in the sense of like, A, I really don't have the time nor the energy to argue with you. And then B, like if you already know everything, then you don't need me, right? But it's the people that they walk into the gym and they see all these machines and they're like, I don't even know where to start. And so
right.
they don't. Um, I'll give you a little story. So I was working out and I looked off to my right, and there's like in Planet Fitness, there's this area where you can do abs. And there's this lady, she's probably about 350 pounds. And she was in there just sweating.
Mm-hmm.
And me, in my pride and arrogance, my initial reaction was, ugh, right?
Yeah.
So I went about my workout, decided I was going to finish with a cool down on the treadmill. And I was doing an incline walk and I looked over and this lady was on a bench trying to do a crunch. I mean, she was giving every ounce of effort to do one crunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was. I don't know who it was, but something in me just said, "You arrogant a-hole." Like, of all the people that should be here, it's her. And instead of encouraging and building that up, you're looking at her like she's a disgusting piece of garbage. And it was very eye-opening to me. Like to have myself, like basically I had to reprimand myself. And here's the thing. I don't know anything about her story. She may have a thyroid issue. She may have
Mm-hmm.
lost her husband and
Yeah.
fell off the face of the planet and was trying to get her life back in that moment. And then you have people like me that are sitting there judging her.
Mm.
So she made eye contact with me and I just mouthed, "I'm proud of you." And she started bawling, like just like tears, right?
So Josh, okay, so I'm gonna have to hold you
Okay.
because not a lot of people would have taken your mind to that place. You know what I'm saying? Like to have the empathy and to see someone who was putting in effort. Because I used to weigh 200 pounds. And so I understand completely how people can judge you and see you And for you to like make that turn to say, you know what, I'm not, I am not going to see a person who is trying to do in that light ever again. In fact, I'm going to be there for, support, to help, to encourage, to motivate, to inspire, as opposed to what I was initially thinking. So, like, you're getting props, because you've got Soraya here who says grateful for your level of autocorrect. Because I think too many times as humans, because we're all humans and we all have our way, that we just go into judgment. There's no curiosity. There's no like asking questions of, what is really going on and what is your goal?
Mhm.
What are you trying to see when you come in here and to the gym? Because it's already intimidating,
Mhm.
right? So, like, is it because you were just like, I mean, you just started to really think, or it just clicked for you?
Um, so in some ways, I think it clicked. One thing I think I always felt as a leader and as an MTI especially was like, if you give me one person with heart, I'll take that
Yes.
any day. I'll take that one person who has heart any day over the people that it comes easy to, right? Because
Yeah.
when you have to work for something, you have to earn something. It means so much more than being given, right? Like I always swore I would never pay for my kids to go to college. Because part of it was I wanted them to earn it. Like they had to buy their own cars. I helped, but they had to earn it. Like they had to buy it. And when going back to that lady, I didn't, for all I know, she may have already lost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't know. Like you don't
You don't
know.
know.
And my thing is just, I was so quick to make a judgment of her as a person based off what I saw without knowing the real story. And as leaders, we do the same thing. Like
Yeah.
you have that airman or you have that staff sergeant. And in reality, a lot of times people are bruised and broken.
Yeah.
And you come in as a leader and you take, you start talking to your people like, oh, that guy's a piece of garbage, that guy's a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. I always, and you know this about me, I always took pleasure in getting everybody's cast offs because one thing I always knew, and this is partly, again, I won't go deep into my history, but people look at me and they make a certain assumption, right? Like I'm a white dude who's tattooed up, go to the gym, blah, blah, blah. But what they don't know about me, right, is I've been raped twice by
Mm-hmm.
two men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was kidnapped. I've lost my youngest son. I've gone, I lost my home and everything I owned at Tyndall. I've just had all these experiences that nobody would look at me and assume like that dude's a sexual assault victim.
Right.
And I'm not, right? I'm a victor like that dude. He only made me stronger.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you don't know someone's story. So for me, like when I saw her, that was the initial judgment was gross. And then to like make that like to realize like you are being everything you hate. Like I was being everything I hate, a judgmental a-hole with no understanding of her story or who she was. And what's cool is I ran into her about 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she walked up to me and she said, the day that you mouthed, I'm proud of you, I was going to quit.
Yeah.
Right. And she didn't.
Yeah.
And she's lost 130 pounds. And, the people I work with, the people I love to work with are the people that will walk into somewhere like a Planet Fitness, which is a basic beginner level gym,
Yeah.
and they feel intimidated. And to watch the empowerment of taking a woman and say, you do belong here. Now, I will also throw this at you. I've noticed since being a trainer just how like women have to deal with a whole level of nonsense in the gym that I
Oh,
don't.
it's a whole thing,
Well,
Josh.
I'm
I
very
mean,
protective of my clients. So like I've actually took a dude's phone. He was videoing one of my clients while she was working out. I took his phone and broke it in half. Like I'm like don't mess with my people. But at the same time, like to watch the confidence level go from here to here, like no, I do belong here. And to see like to get the text, like I did my way in, I'm down 3% body fat, I'm up this much. And also to take their mindset and be like, it's not about the scale. It's not about
yeah.
the scale. The scale is a liar, right? Like you may not lose any weight, but your body fat goes down and your muscle goes up and you're
Yeah.
winning. right? And on top of that, results are not just calculated by loss of pounds. Are you getting up earlier and being disciplined? Are you drinking more water? Are you sleeping better? Are you eating better? These are results. Like, these are tangible results that are changing your life. So
Yes.
the pounds losing and all that, that'll come down the road, especially with a solid plan. But to have a client who's out of shape, they know they're out of shape, and they have the humility to ask me for help, to me, like, again, that's the heart that I'm looking for. And then to watch, just even in, I'm talking 2 months, in 2 months, to watch the complete transformation. I mean, like, right before we got on, I have a client, she's 105 pounds. She's like, I want to add some muscle. And she sent me some pictures of her flexing. And I was like, what the hell? Like, she's like, I was like, your arms are getting big. And like, she's so proud of herself. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is why you do what you do, because it's about seeing people make positive change and to give themselves forward momentum, right?
Yeah.
So that's it.
So, I absolutely love the work that you're doing, and it's not all about the physical aspect. It's
Mhm.
more of the confidence, the discipline, the structure, the empowerment. And that is key when you're like moving your body and getting out of your habits that you have developed for so many years that you just go back to,
Yeah.
and then exploring new ones. And so Soraya, she has a comment here that I want to put on the screen. She said, most humans are like that, but don't have the mental toughness or the emotional intelligence to even recognize that they're being what they hate, right?
Hmm.
Let alone do the work to not continue being that way. So, like, that's why I was like, you need to explain to the audience, like, emotional intelligence is a thing.
100%.
Being aware of you first, and then being aware of the other people around you is like key to everything. If you want to be in a space of leadership, of a space of business, whatever the case may be, like, emotional intelligence, it matters.
Yep.
you know
That's one thing with Fusewell especially, I really try to focus on. I know there's different philosophies, but the four pillars, right? The emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. And I'll give you
Yes.
an example. So in my own life right now, they're about 95%, which you and I haven't talked about this, but we're being real, right?
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
go.
About 95% chance that I actually have colon cancer at the moment. Um, just in the infancy stages of them exploring all of that. And I was thinking about this the other day, like when my doctor was going through all this with me. I've spent years building my body, right, to get to a place where I can physically do my job. But what happens when the physical goes away, right? Like, if you
Mm.
don't have it anymore, and if you don't have those other pillars, if you don't have the emotional pillar built up, if you don't have the spiritual pillar built up, if you don't have the intellectual pillar built up, like, you're not a whole person. Like, you have tons of people that are great looking, they're in great shape, they've got a great job, but they're morally bankrupt.
Mm.
People that use other people, that treat other people like garbage, or conversely, they could have all these things in line, but they're obese, and that's limiting the impact that they can have in their life. And that's why actually the name Fusewell, that's where it came from. Was I built bombs for the Air Force for 20 years, and part of building a bomb is, you have this big bomb body, and there's a tube in it that you put the fuse in. That's called the fuse well. And if the fuse well is dirty or blocked, you can't put the fuse in all the way. And so
Yeah.
a couple of things can happen. One, it could be a dud, or two, you're not going to be able to finish building the bomb, right? Now, if you drop a 10,000-pound bomb on somebody from 10,000 feet, they're smoked.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't explode, you're limiting the impact that bomb could have had, right? Like, in it doesn't explode. It's not doing what it was meant to do. And in the same way, in our lives, you can have a great job. You can be very successful as an airman or as a CEO or whatever. But if your family's falling apart, you are not successful. I'm sorry. You're just not. You are not successful.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, let's go back to, first of all, Like I didn't know that, so I'm going to be praying that, whatever they find, that they're able to eradicate that.
It's
And
beatable.
uh,
I will crush it. It's beatable.
yeah, like we can't have that. All right. So cancer sucks. And so, that's one. The other is you know, success is different for everyone, right? And everyone has their picture of success. And I've had a couple of folks on the show here that their their family they did not cross the finish line with them, right?
Mm.
And it was because there was so many competing factors that were going on, especially in military service. I think not a lot of times do we talk about, and I was just talking to a couple earlier today because they're dual, that we have to make sure that our relationships with the people that we started out with, we have to do what we can in the moment, but knowing that success looks different for everyone. And I think that's one of the things that I have found, after I retired, is folks are just your success, like our success, 20 years, 30 years, for some people, that's like, what are y'all doing? That's not success to them. So, you have to be able to give people the grace and the kind of like the support that they need for encouragement, because it doesn't always play out like you think it's going to play out.
No, and a lot of times it's because of the choices that we've made that you can't go and unmake. You know what I mean? Like if I'm very fortunate in the sense of I made a lot of mistakes when I was young, that my wife stuck with me through. Um,
Yeah.
so at my retirement ceremony, I got to look down and my family was there.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't have been that way. She was very full of grace and very forgiving. And so for that reason, I was fortunate. And at the end of the day, you only a lot of times learn based off of the mistakes that you make, right? Like there are things that you look back 10 years ago and you're like, I wish I would not have done that.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't think that you're an unsuccessful person necessarily. That was probably a very bad way of me putting that. But what I was trying to say was like, if there are areas in your life where you look like you're doing great here, but
Yeah.
you're neglecting these areas,
Yeah.
you probably have huge holes that are going to sink your ship at some point, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you can see that with people that are very successful, but then, success is determined by they have a lot of money, they have a great job, but then they get arrested for insider trading or, just things where it's like, yeah, they went morally bankrupt. And so they sacrificed this for what everybody thought was successful.
Mm.
And you and I have seen this. I'll preach this till the day I die. Making chief in the military that doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. I mean, yeah, you made the 1%, but if you did so on the backs and at the expense of your people,
Yeah.
then you got
But
exactly what you shot for, but you don't have a single bit of understanding about what a chief actually is. Like you get the rank and you're going to get the retirement. Good for you. Like good for you.
yeah.
But your legacy is gone. Like you have none.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, everybody has their definition. And so I know one person, they told me straight to my face, my retirement plan is to make chief. Okay,
Mm.
but the problem is about 3 weeks after you retire, you're gonna get that itch of like wanting to do something. Very few people are gonna be able to just sit on their butt on the couch and watch TV for the next 30 years. They're gonna want to
Yeah.
do something else.
Yeah. Because, okay, so there's a lot of points to make. First of all, Soraya wants to put this out for you. Praying for you, Joshua. Thank you for your service and your transparency. Everything you've been through prepared you for everything you're facing. You given me some enlightenment and confirmation today.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
so she is like in it. She's like, yes, like, keep on talking. But, man, there's so many different highlights that I wanted to make in the conversation a little bit that you just took us on. It's people are thinking when they get to a certain level in the military that people are going to recognize that when they go out and doing whatever you do. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that I'm giving people grace because they just don't know, because I went through that, is when you come out here, you're not a chief, senior master sergeant, sergeant, all these other things. That is part of your story, but it's not the whole entire story. 50, and I retired at the age of 49, and now I'm 51. It's still young. It's like that in between, young but a little bit old, you know what I'm saying? But you still have a lot of life in you. And you said, well, what are you going to do
Yep.
in that next life?
Yep.
Right? Like, how can you make now an impact and a difference? Maybe you didn't get everything right in this chapter, right? And the things that you were looking at. Now in this chapter, you're like, I'm
Mhm.
totally going to change the way that I have been looking at things. So,
What's an interesting perspective too is I joined the military at 22. I retired at 42.
mm-hmm,
I can't even collect Social Security,
mm-hmm,
right? So I actually have more time to be to do what I'm doing. And I have big dreams for the future that if you want to go into down the road, we can. But
yeah, like tell us, tell us what.
my goal, it sounds really weird, but my goal is to purchase a hotel in Thailand.
Okay.
And then my wife and I intend to start a nonprofit where I have several friends that are special operators, where we will go and we remove sex trafficked children, and women, and we will use the hotel as a way to offer them a place of employment and somewhere that they can live. And then while they're there, we will get sponsors from the States or Europe, where it could be anywhere from 100 to 150 bucks a month. But that 100 to 150 would actually pay for school, clothing, and most of what they would need, right? I've been in
Yeah.
Thailand several times, like the dollar stretches very far.
Yeah.
So that's the goal down the road. And I would love to have one in Southeast Asia, one in South America, one in Central America, and several in Africa, to fight, not just to fight, but to remove women and children from those situations and give them a safe place where we're teaching life skills like how to cook, get them jobs. Um, and then the goal would be educate these kids so that they can be future leaders of their own countries, right? Like get them the education so that they become the doctors and the lawyers and the pastors, for down the road. Obviously, it would be a functioning hotel, but we would vet who is allowed to come and who would stay, right? Like they would have to be vetted. It's not just an open hotel. Like, that would
Right.
be a protect the folks that we're rescuing. But growing up in Mexico, I saw firsthand, the evils of the cartel, and how they
Mm-hmm.
treated people. And then when I was in Thailand, we were at a night market, and I got offered a 2-year-old kid.
Huh?
Yeah, like I had a dude try to sell me a 2-year-old kid for sex. And so I saw very quickly like that it was a pervasive aura that was there. It was just, and so, my wife and I both have this burning desire to do something about it.
Yeah.
So everything I'm doing with Fusewell and with Reaper Fit, I'm hoping to build a foundation so that down the road, I have the skill set of managing and owning a business, learning how to interact with banks and all these other things, so that we can actually get that idea going,
Yeah.
in the future. So that's kind of, I don't know if you watched The Sound of Freedom, but The Sound of, when I watched it, it was just another punch in my face of like, no, this is something you have to do. So I'm using learning how to build an LLC, and like I'm trying to learn all these things so that in down the road, um, I can successfully do that and not get into legal or financial trouble down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of like I'm using this as a foundation, and if God, so blesses us that this turns into something that actually financially helps us, then great. But if anything, um, being able to help people identify the areas in their life that are stopping them from being the most impactful, and then also with Reaper Fit, helping people get physically fit, those are just a foundation so that down the road, I can do what I really feel like God put me on earth to do. Like I'm physically capable of going into a jungle, whereas a lot of people aren't.
Right.
And I have the desire to do it. So
Yeah.
uh, I I don't know why it's such a burning passion for me. Maybe it was due to my experiences when I was a child of being
Mm,
sexually assaulted and everything.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think growing up in a third world country and seeing just how out in front it is and nobody does anything about it. So that's kind of where all of this is leading to, is like I want feasible strategies. I want to build a foundation there. Maybe down the road, even have people that work with me, or we'll say for me, but have a team that's able to continue to do that, and have a team that continues to lead Reaper Fit, so that I can then focus on what I want to do in Southeast Asia. So that's
So
kind of where.
listen, hey Josh. Okay, you talk my language because this is business mind 101. I was just talking to Chevy. So Chevy just put on there. You got a couple of, I love it's from Soraya, April, and Chevy. So Chevy and I are accountability partners, and we
Okay.
were just talking about having multiple businesses, and having it being, we can sell it to folks who want to use it and
Mhm.
will continue on to be this legacy builder. And so I love the fact of the matter, first of all, the passion that you have to do something that like deep down inside, that you were built to do. Like this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it. And so that requires a shifted mindset. So I want us to talk
Yeah.
briefly about the mindset, right? So because of the transition from going from the military into civilian, the mindset shift has to occur, especially if you're going to go into the entrepreneurial space,
Yeah.
right? Because we're so used to getting the first and the 15th, giving my paycheck. All right. Thank you very much. And in entrepreneurial, it's a risk. It's making decisions like in real time. It's like putting things on paper that you like say, here's my plan, and then you're executing them. Like you have all these hats, right? CEO, CFO, marketing, whatever the case may be. And so what kind of mindset shift, or what kind of things did you do to kind of like take you from military to where you're at right now?
I mean, it's a continuing process for me, right?
Yeah.
Like I would say every week that I'm more retired, a little less of that skin is on me, and I shed it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know it sounds stupid. So I went out and
Nothing
got,
on here sounds
no,
stupid,
I went out
guys.
and got hand tattoos, partly because I knew it would stop me from ever having a job where I'd have to wear a tie and sit in a business room again.
What?
Yeah, that was like, I wouldn't get a hand tattoo because when I was working at State Farm, my boss was like, "You can't wear short sleeves because you have all these tattoos, so it's off-putting to people." Um, and part of part of my mentality is kind of, the story of like Burn the Boats, like where the Spanish conquistador goes to South America and they burn their boats because
Uh-huh.
that stopped his men from ever thinking like, we got to do this or we die.
Yeah.
That was my hand tattoos, was like, I'm doing this and I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to work for me, because I don't, like, it was literally my burn the boats moment of like, if I get this, I already know that's like, that's the first thing they're going to look at, and they're going to be like, sorry. Right. And so for me, like, I have to make this work.
Yeah.
Like, and I know it's a stupid thing to have done, but just Josh being Josh, I was like, I'm going hard, man. And it may fail. And and that's a very real possibility. Like, it may fail. But I'll tell you this, if it does, everything I learned from that failure will be then turned into doing something else.
Yeah.
So it's just, the mentality shift was, it went from the military was easy for me. You get told what to do, and then you in turn tell other people what to do. That's that simple. There are days, Rochelle, that I sat on my couch for almost 2 weeks straight and did nothing but play Call of Duty. Right. Like, I was in a depression. I was in a slump. I didn't know who I was anymore, because I'm not Senior Roberts anymore. I'm
Right.
just Josh.
Yeah.
And who the hell was that? I don't even
Yeah.
know. Like, I'm not the same person I was when I came in at 20, right? Like, I just, not in any way, shape, or form. And so having to rediscover, like, what is it that matters to me? And it's not even about like, I don't want to be told what to do. It's about, I want to tell myself what to do, right? And then everything
Mm.
that I earn or everything that I don't earn is because of my hard work or lack of, right? Like, it's only me to blame. And then there's another part of it. um, my daughter is 18.
Yeah.
She Kaylee is, if I'm black, she's white, right? Like I'm emotionally driven. I'm a very passionate person. Kaylee is analytical. She's logical. And I had to figure out with her kind of how to interact with her. And when she was a freshman a few years ago, she had a seizure and she was unable to talk for a whole year.
I
A whole
remember
year
that.
she couldn't talk, right? And so out of that, she started going to a psychologist, and the psychologist was like, she talked to my wife and she said, "Hey, I need to talk to you by yourself." And so I had to leave the room. What came from that conversation was my wife came out to the car and I was sitting in the car and she's like, "I really don't want to tell you this." And I was like, "Well, now you have to, right? I need to know." And she's like, she basically said, "Kaylee hates you." Um, which being a dad was the only thing I never wanted to fail at. And so to hear like your daughter, it wasn't that she hated me, she resented me.
Mm.
Partly because of how intense I was from being an MTI and just so I strategically for the past 4 years have been building that relationship back with my daughter, right? Strategic.
Mm.
Kaylee is one of those people I can say I love you. I might get one back, I might not, right? Like
Yeah.
she's not a words of affirmation person. That's my love language. It is not hers. Hers is gift giving. So out of the blue, when I was in Michigan, I got a text from her and she said, "Dad, you're building something from the ground up and showing me that I can achieve my dreams. I'm very proud of you." And that was like that was the most affirmation, I think, besides from my spouse, that I've ever gotten in my life. And I started thinking about, I was like, like by being an entrepreneur and leaving something I loved, because I did, I truly loved it. And that I loved
Yeah.
serving in the military.
Oh, yeah.
It was just time for a change and it was time for something different. And I'm showing my kids, you don't have to be stuck, right? And here's the thing, if
Mm.
I do fail, my kids are going to watch me bounce back from that failure, learn and do better, right? Because that's what life really is. You don't get to lay in your bed and hope everybody comes to save you, because that's not what happens. You either learn from your mistakes and you grow from it, or you lay there and die. Like that's your choices, right? Like and here's the thing too, is like bad things happen to you that aren't your fault.
That's right.
But it is still your responsibility to take ownership of your own life and figure out how you're going to overcome those things. Like I could sit there and be like, "Well, I was raped by dudes. I lost my son." Yeah, that did happen to me. But had the weak Josh who attempted suicide in Korea when I was a staff sergeant, had that actually happened, I would have missed so many things. Like if I had just given up like I wanted to, and I tried, and fortunately I had friends that saved my life basically. But like I want my kids to see as an entrepreneur, like it's not even about the money. It's not about the
Mhm.
money. It's about finding my purpose and doing something that brings me joy and like makes me
Yes.
passionate again, right? Like makes me passionate. Like
Yeah.
I am not passionate about numbers and accounting, but I know people that are. And so
Yeah.
it'd be stupid for them to go try to be a personal trainer when they don't give a shit about it, but like they love numbers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, I also believe in paying your dues, right? Like you don't just get to quit your job at 21 and be like, "I'm just going to follow my passions." You don't even know what they are probably at that point. You don't figure out. Like you do have to work your way and pay your bills. But when you're able to get to a point where you're like, "I'm going to be bold, I'm going to go for it."
Yeah.
It's a bold decision to retire from the Air Force or to get out before retirement, because everyone's going to be like, "What about your pension?"
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're at 15, 5 years is a long time to be miserable.
It sure is.
And you know
I
what?
was just having a conversation with someone earlier today, and they're like, "I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "You're retirement eligible. If you're not happy in the job that you're in right now, what is holding you back from just saying, you know what? Let me create a plan, right? To
It's,
figure out how to exit.
it's
It's
fear.
time for me to exit,
Yeah.
right? And go forward and move in there. It's because of this shift. It's not, they're not ready to make the shift yet.
It's so scary though. It's so scary
It
because
is scary.
it's such a part of who you are and what you've done. Like I have a tattoo on my forearm. It's a pirate ship. I won't show it super close, but it's a
Yeah.
ship and I've always envisioned, like, those dudes that were like, "I'm just gonna get in that boat, I'm gonna go across the ocean, and I'm gonna find something out there." And you're like, everyone's like, "You're gonna fall off the planet." Like there's nothing out
Yeah.
there. But those dudes had the guts to get in a boat and just sail into the unknown, right? And like for me, leaving the military was a lot like that because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew the Air Force and I were on different paths at that point.
Yep.
I felt like I'd used up my usefulness, and I felt like maybe the Air Force didn't really want my style anymore, right? And so,
Okay. Yeah.
as a leader, instead of being
Yep.
a toxic leader who stayed around and was complaining and angry all the time, I chose to leave on my own terms with my head up, right?
Yep.
Like I'm not going to sit and here's the thing, for kids that are coming in the military now, they don't know the Air Force from 20 years ago. So for you to continually put that in their face is unfair to them. Like let them
Yep.
have the Air Force that they get, right? But for me, when you're in an organization, you can accept it, change it, or leave it. Like when something doesn't align with your goals. And I couldn't change it because I'm just one dude, but I didn't want to accept some of the things that I thought were harmful. And so I left. And that was, for me, I kid you not, that was the most courageous decision I've ever made in my life because the Air Force was easy. I was on a sure path to chief. You know that. Like I would have,
Hmm.
my career field manager called me when I pushed the button. Was like, "What are you
Yeah.
doing?" And but who cares about chief? Like if you're miserable, like, and it's I just like, but it was hard. It was hard to do. And then the second most courageous thing I did was quit at State Farm because it was a guaranteed paycheck. But I just knew like I'm not happy. So like, like
Yeah.
it
I
was
think that's so important for people to hear too. This is not, there is no shade, like I said before, in getting a, 9 to 5 and, going for your career that you really wanted to get into after service, right? But when you are not happy and you really know that you can do something else, it's all about betting on yourself and actually just going for it, not being ill informed, because I don't prescribe to people being ill informed about what it is that you want to do. You have to do some research and you have to know exactly what you want to do. You don't have to have everything figured out, but you do have to know, like, hey, I need to probably like look into this, maybe take a step in that. And I just heard the other day about dream and dabbling, dreaming and dabbling. When you're dreaming about the things that you want to do, you could start dabbling in it by doing some networking in that space, or contacting folks that are actually doing it and looking to see what they're doing and how they're doing it.
right.
And then, you know what I'm saying, and then stepping out and going, okay, I think that's what I want to do, right?
One thing I thought about not too long ago was like dreams happen when you're asleep, right? Like
Mm,
a goal though, like when I think of a goal, I think of like soccer. Like you're kicking a ball and you're making a goal. A goal happens when you're on the field because you don't get to make a goal when you're on the sideline. Like when you're on the bench, you're one of the players, you don't get to do it. Like a goal is something you have to be on the field engaged for you to score a goal, right? But dreams happen like while you're sleeping. And it's not that they're bad, but a dream is something that's out there that you're thinking about. But
yeah.
a goal is something that you're putting on a piece of paper and you're like, I may
Good.
not be able to
Yeah.
be a personal trainer now, but if I enroll in this course, then it's preparing me to be that, right? And so I have a guy I coach that he's kind of he knows what he's doing. He's a long-term answer, right? But at the same time, I told him, I was like, do you have another plan? He's like, no. Then I was like, then you have to keep doing it because you have kids and you have to pay your bills. I was like, but what we can do is we're going to start narrowing down. So what I had him do is I had him write down 10 priorities, like 10 priorities in his life. And then he had to narrow those down to 3. Those are
Yeah.
his 3 non-negotiables. Like you have to have these. So for me, mine are my family, my health, and then relationships. If what I'm doing doesn't hit all 3 of those, then I will not do it, right? So
Right.
I've cut people out of my life. I've
Yeah.
left other things behind because they did not correspond with those 3 things. Like if it's bad for my family, if it's bad for my health, or if it destroys or ruins a relationship that I consider important, then I don't want to do that thing.
Yeah.
So he went through, and his were very similar. And so that was our basis of like, okay, so as we're looking at potential things down the road that you want to do, we know at a minimum it has to give you time with your family.
Yep.
It has to be beneficial to your health, or at least not detrimental to your health. And
Right.
then has to enable you to still maintain relationships with the people that you want. Everything outside of that is negotiable, but those 3 things are not. And it was cool to watch him, like his eyes kind of open. And he's like, interesting. But like I made him, it took him 2 weeks to come up with that list, because I was like, no, I want you to think about it. I want you to ask your wife. I want you to ask people that know you, like, what are your non-negotiables? And I was not expecting him to say his health. But when we sat down and talked, he was like, I realized that if I want to be there for my family, then I have to have my health. And so that's where he was like, I really want you to train me now in the gym. And so he's been going to the gym with me for about 6 weeks. But before that, he hadn't even thought about his health as a priority. But the more he thought about, like, in order for me to be there for my family, I have to be physically capable of being there. Like, and that's where suddenly out of nowhere, he was like, my health is important. And so, it was just interesting. But like, I would recommend, like, if you haven't done that, for everyone to write down, like, these are priorities, but these are the non-negotiables. And for some people, it's independence. For some people, it's financial independence, because they grew up poor and they will never be in that situation again, right? Like, whatever it is, it may be, I want to work for myself because I don't want somebody to tell me what to do. But whatever those are, to come to that place where, these are my 3 non-negotiables. Everything else, if I have to sell cars, but it enables me to do these 3 things, fine, I'll sell cars. But yeah, it was fun to kind of help him narrow it down too. And so now we're in the stage of coaching where we're helping him figure out, like, what are his passions, and then how does that align with his priorities.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love the work. It's just very similar to what I'm doing as well, because I feel like when you get these bigger pieces of, you as yourself, and really working on you, and making it known, I think that's another thing too, right? You got to tell folks, these are my priorities here, because if you don't, it just goes all kinds of sideways. And I think that people are not really living, and I'll put in air quotes, their best life, because folks are out here saying they live in their best life, right? But they're, maybe not doing some things because, they don't have all of the knowledge, or they haven't really looked into it. So, I love the work that you're doing. I love the tool that you just gave, and the leadership and the mindset piece to it. So, what else, as we kind of close this show up for tonight, would you offer to the audience before we leave?
So I know a lot of your audience it's a lot of military folks that are transitioning or looking to do so down the road. Um, one piece of advice I would have is, the military consumes your life, but there's life outside of it. Like, there's life outside of it. If you genuinely enjoy and you feel like you're making a difference doing what you're doing for the military, continue to do it, right? But like, don't allow fear to stop you from looking at other possibilities. And then know why, like, know why you're getting out or why you're choosing to stay. But like, don't just wing it. Like, if you're getting out, so I got out partly because my youngest son is a cross country and track star, and I will be at every meet. I will be at every meet. And I have been at every meet, because when he crosses that finish line, he's going to hear my voice, right? Like, that's a priority for me. I couldn't just leave on Fridays when I was in the Air Force. I couldn't, but now I can. I rearranged my schedule to meet my son's schedule. My wife has followed me for 20 years, working at coffee shops and doing bit jobs. And she's working in a job where they are investing in her now. And to watch her growing as a leader, to had stayed and made chief and do a 3-year service commitment, knowing that I was going to have to move at least twice more and uproot my family again. It just seemed, basically for my ego to say that I'm the chief, didn't seem like the right decision for me. But for some people, they're still making a huge difference in the lives of the people that they lead. And so, there is no right answer. Like, the right answer is subjective to the person. I would say get your family's input and realize that that's a significant input. But I would venture to guess that your gut already knows, like, what the right is. And I'll tell you, I've never been happy to say that I'm not stressed. Having 2 companies is stressful, but it's a different type of stress. And then I would also tell you, be wise and judicious in who you choose to advise you through the VA process, take advantage of the VA in the sense of like there's a lot of things out there. So things like the yellow ribbon program for your children going to school. There's so many programs out there that the VA has that people just don't know about. So
Yeah.
become informed before you get out so that you know what you're get a good VSO that can help you through the disability process. Don't just wing it if you don't have to. There are a lot of really good people out there that know a lot that can help, but don't game the system either. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
get what you earned and then be content. But it is amazing to think where I'm at right now in September, and I started my LLC September 15th of last year. So it's been about a year.
Yeah.
The iterations that I've gone through of like not knowing what I wanted to do, and now I'm still figuring it out, but it's like it's evolving, and it's fun. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I stay plugged in, but also realize like there's a lot of people out there that aren't military that are
Yeah.
really good people. You know what I mean? That having those relationships is important. People don't care if you were an O6 or if you were an E9. People just don't care.
Yeah. So you all heard it here. Josh, I thank you so much for attending the Slay to Success talk
Yeah.
show hosted by your girl, your Slay Queen, y'all. Right. So I want you all to have an amazing week. All right. And keep on slaying until you can't slay no more. Thank you so much, Josh, for being here.
Thank you.
And please subscribe, 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 and share, and share, and share. So we will see you all next Sunday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, y'all. And yet we will have another delightful and enlightening conversation with another person that I'm just inspired by each and every day. All right, y'all. See you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.